This is DIY Cyber Guy with David W. Schrofer. Every week, he will show you how cybersecurity can be as easy as locking up your house at night. Now, here is your host, David W. Schrofer.
Welcome back, everybody, to DIY Cyber Guy. This is episode 77, Limitations for AI, Hype versus Reality. This is a hair on fire 1 out of 5, nothing urgent, and it's focused on people who are in some way responsible for programmers. And it's also for anybody really who's heard the hype about AI and these wild and outrageous numbers that it's going to allow you to cut your team in half overnight. You know, some of those things may be true in some areas and some of them aren't. And this is a conversation about one of them that might not be as true as the reports lead us to believe. So I'm going to focus on a McKinsey study called Unleashing Developer Productivity with Generative AI. And this is a report that found that AI tools can decrease developer time by up to 70%. And when you take a closer look at that number, there are a lot of factors that are behind it. Number one, those are for routine tasks and not for highly complex tasks. Number two, they seem to focus on very experienced users who are using AI that could experience a time saving on that level. And inexperienced programmers were actually found to spend more time with the same tasks if they had to use AI versus not using AI, which is interesting. So while this article talks about training and use case selection, skill development, and risk and governance controls, there really is a lot to the 70% number. And again, the 70% is the number that gets headlines. But when you look under the surface, not only is that number very, very different, but it actually could go the other way with AI costing more time than it saves. Here with me to talk about this today is Marcus Fontoura. Marcus is a technical fellow and CTO for Azure Core at Microsoft, and his career has spanned computational advertising, fintech, and cloud computing. He has been at the forefront of technologies that define how we live and work today, and he's just released a new book called The Platform Mindset, Building a Culture of Collaboration, which explores how companies can innovate and stay ahead of the curve. Welcome, Marcus.
Hey, David. So happy to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for being on the show. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. Because, Marcus, we've done a lot of conversations about AI, and almost all of them uniformly are, here's how it will change your life. Here's how it will improve your efficiency. Here's how you can, hack hours of tasks out of your day. So this is one of the first we've done on, okay, let's all take a breath and look at what's hype and what might not be hype. So can't wait to dive into the conversation. So let me start here with this question. What do you think about the study that I just cited, and what else should companies of small, medium, even large companies be thinking about when they're using AI?
Yeah, David, I think it's really a revolutionary technology, AI, and I think it's impacting knowledge workers everywhere, right? So we see what it can do in helping you do research, helping you writing code, helping you develop logos and marketing campaigns and so on. It's really a fantastic technology. And I think the application of AI in software development is a really suitable application, because one of the major problems that we see with AI today is this idea of hallucinations, right? That AI hallucinates. Yeah. And if you look at how it's built under the covers, there is nothing really in these models that prevent a wrong answer from being generated, because these models basically work by the probability of generating the next token. But when we look at software development, we already have humans in the loop, right? Because we write the code and then we send the code to our colleagues to validate with code reviews. We develop tests for the code. So all these are already check and balances that we have in the development pipeline that can mitigate this problem with hallucinations. And I'm seeing like tremendous productivity gains by using AI for developers in Microsoft and other companies that are our clients and that we work with, which is all super exciting. When talking about this study in particular about the number 70%, like I'm not so certain about that number because, as you said in the intro, there is a tremendous gap of like who is using AI. Like, and then my own personal experience, for instance, has been that like some tasks that I'm trying to do are greatly accelerated, but if I didn't have the background or if I was not an experienced developer, it would be very hard for me to get these tools unstuck when they sometimes get stuck, when they produce wrong results and so on. So I think it's a great tool for a few scenarios. I think it will really improve the life of software developers, but I would be just worried about quoting the 70% productivity gains at this point of the technology curve.
Excellent. So there for an experienced developer who understands testing, who understands software development, who understands architecture, AI can be a helpful tool. But it's because it's prone to things like hallucinations. A 70% reduction is really not what people should expect from their development team. You know, it's not like you can cut it by 2/3 and still have it produce the same quantity. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think like cutting a team by 2/3 is like a little bit premature at this point. I think,
Good.
and to be frank, like I think if you look at the CTOs and development leaders and the head of technology organizations, they probably track how much their technology teams have to deliver in terms of new feature, containing technical debt, improving the platforms and so on, and what's the size of the team. And then for me, in more than 20 years in this field, I never worked in a company that the balance is not that the team has normally a lot more to do than we have people. And we are talking about making developers more productive, gaining productivity, but I'm not sure if you are in the point that we are switching the curve and saying like now developers are so productive that they'll cut through all the backlogs and build all the features and then they'll have nothing to do and then we can cut them. I think we're still far away to get to that point.
Very good.
And
So for my listeners, Marcus is saying if you run a dev team, don't start chopping off jobs because you're going to need them. Yes, there are efficiencies to come, but not so much that it's going to take less people because, as you mentioned, backlog is reality with any dev team.
yeah, and David, I think like we may be over pivoting on this idea of cutting the teams and cutting costs and all that. But I think there is another approach with AI that's to me is a little bit more promising, that it's looking from the angle of improving quality. And maybe you can draw a parallel to other fields that AI really help improve quality. Like just look at what spell checkers and then grammar correctors and then ChatGPT, this evolution of tools that help you edit text, really improve the quality of the text that we produce, right? So like, for instance, if you think about the 70s, before the introduction of spell checkers, probably it was acceptable for you to read the text that was printed, but there was a few spelling mistakes. But today is unacceptable, even to have grammar mistakes or even to write a text that is not concise and to the point, because we already have so many tools, and a lot of them AI tools that help us produce clear and concise text. The same is true with software development. So instead of first thinking about productivity gains and cutting people, we should think, can we improve really the quality and the throughput of like what the dev team is doing? Let's expect better tests. Let's expect more resilient software. Let's use the gains that we're having in productivity to really raise the bar and expect more from the team. And then we'll learn, and then eventually we'll be able to cut costs. But like I think that shouldn't be the primary concern at this point.
That's a great analogy, looking at things like spell check and using an early computer or a self, a typewriter with a preview, or one of the earlier computers without spell check, versus the quality of the printed word or written text using a device after spell check came along. We just expected a lot fewer mistakes after that. And I think that's particularly pertinent based on what you were saying about hallucinations earlier. And let's talk about what that means, because we've talked about that on the show a couple of times. But essentially, it's when AI understands the answer to most of the question, but it has a gap in what it wants to report to you, and it doesn't want to leave that gap completely empty. It will make something up and stick it in there. So if you're using it to do something simple like rewrite an email or make a letter more professional, that's one thing. It'll insert the word asparagus when you wanted it to insert Jeep Wrangler, or something completely different, but you fix that in the editing. But when it comes to computer programming, if it makes up even a few characters in a line of code, that can be very hard to find unless A, you know how you have good testing regimens in place, but B, you know what to look for. You can spot an error quickly when AI is giving you some content. So would you like to expand on that? Am I on the right track with that?
Hey, David, I
comparison?
think this is spot on. I think like this idea of engineering rigor is super important and super relevant for developing code. Even when we are not using AI, you have to impose rigor, especially if you're building services that are used like by a lot of people. Let's say if you're writing like a banking application that is responsible for managing people's money, you really want that piece of software to be well tested.
Yes.
Now imagining trusting part of the software that does bank transfers to an AI and not validating it properly, uh, especially understanding that the technology today has no intrinsic knowledge about truth and non-factual information. The reason these computers that run AI systems hallucinate is because these models, they are trained over a lot of text that's publicly available on the internet, and then they know how to reproduce and compute the probability of the most likely word to write next, but they have no concept of reality, falsehood, and right from wrong, right? They are just replicating what they learn. And they are so good because comparing to a human, an AI read about 50,000 years. So imagine, David, like reading for 50,000 years and memorizing most of it.
And
Like this is a
remembering
lot
it
more than
all
what
from
we
day
can.
one.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why AI knows so much and can help you so much. But it will not intrinsically know what's fact and what's fiction. So when it gets to computer engineering and and the rigor that we need to impose for the systems that we write, we need to have a very rigid discipline if you are allowing our developers to use AI tools.
Okay, so Marcus, let's say one of our listeners is a development manager and they would love to just carefully start using AI. They haven't yet because of their concern about errors and making the product worse than it would be if the developers did it themselves. What advice could you give that development manager to cautiously, consciously start using artificial intelligence for program development?
Yeah, this is a great question, David, because there are several ways that people can use AI that are very relevant to software development that might not even mean writing code. One of the easiest things to start adopting is using AI as a code reviewer before even writing code. So let's say your devs are still writing the code, but most of the tools now provide access to a AI reviewer that we can, and then we can use that to provide to have AI provide comments on the code that your developers wrote. And this is a very good way to start, because in the same way that you can provide prompts to ChatGPT, you can provide prompts to these tools to train these tools on the coding standards that we want to use, the engineering rigor that we want to impose. Maybe you can say the guidelines that you want people to adopt when writing code. And AI can help enforce that. That's an initial use of AI that doesn't even imply developers using it to produce code, but that already produces significant boosts in quality, because in the absence of that, we have to have like developers reviewing the code, and you still want to have developers reviewing the code. But what we've seen that these AI agents, they are super code reviewers, right? They don't get tired. They do the job very diligently for you. So they are great code reviewers. So this is one. Second is like writing tests. For instance, you can have the developers write the code, but ask AI to write the unit tests for them, to write the integration tests, even to set up their development environment, because sometimes you have so many libraries that you depend on, and do all the burdensome work, the work that you have to do to set up your environment to be productive. AI can help automate a lot of that for you. So a lot of manual tasks can be delegated by AI. And then once you start getting these early experiences with the tools, then you can be more and more confident and adopting it for more and more scenarios.
Okay. That's very practical advice. That's exactly the type of thing we like to give on this podcast. So thank you for that. So as kind of a follow-up to that, you're the CTO of Azure Core. You mentioned before we started recording that your team is about 18,000 people. Did I get that right?
About 12,000 people now.
About 12,000 people. I gave you a promotion right there. Okay, so your team is about 12,000 people. So yes, some of those must be developers. I'm sure you have the lion's share of that number are technologists, but you're also an executive. You're also in charge of 12,000 people, and there are administrative tasks and other managerial tasks that some of my listeners might be more easily able to relate to, because they have the same types of tasks, whether they're managing a large team or just trying to use AI to make their job as an executive easier. So I try to ask this question of every C-level person I have on the show. How else do you use AI outside of technology, outside of software development, to just make your job as a CTO easier?
David, I use it a lot. Like I use it, for instance, when I'm meeting a customer and that use Azure, and then we want to discuss like the use of Azure in some customers. For instance, like I to prep for that meeting, I use Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, to do the deep research, look into all the emails, all the conversations we had with the customer, and provide a summary so that I can like be prepared for the meetings. I use it a lot to sometimes summarize documents. I help it. I help my own writing when I do for like to produce a document. I always have like Copilot to review it so that I'm sure that I'm producing like a concise document to share among my peers. So I use it in many ways, and I also use it for coding. Like I still code a little bit, like, and then and I feel it's not even that I do a lot of production code anymore, because I don't, but I just want to like understand how the technologies work is evolving. So I play around with the development tools just to understand like where they are heading and what we can do. So I use it a lot. Like a lot of my day is like playing with AI these days.
As we all are, we're all just sort of testing the limits. But that's a great example of Microsoft Copilot. Preparing for a client meeting can be a very time-consuming thing. So the ability to pull in all the emails, all the proposals, all of the track record, actual results of the client account before a meeting is extremely helpful.
one thing that I think, like when we are talking about the use of AI, that's very important uh, to point out to development managers is that there is a difference between building something from scratch and also um, doing incremental work in a large code base. And then I think this is also relevant when we are deciding which capabilities of AI we want to use, right? So, and the parallel that I want to make, that I always believe like that is a good parallel and a good metaphor for us to have is, imagine that you are using ChatGPT to write a text about the economy of China. It's very likely that ChatGPT will do a decent enough job and will write something helpful for you. But imagine the scenario is there was a paper about the economy of China published at The Economist or in the Wall Street Journal, and you ask GPT to find the error in that paper, or there is a mistake there, and say, I want ChatGPT to find a mistake. It's very plausible that they will not be able to do a good job in that task, right? It's a much more difficult task that we are asking them to do. And the same is true for software development. Like writing something from 0 to 70%, like you have a new idea, you want to build a prototype. It's like the easiest case because you don't have any legacy. You don't have to look at your previous like backlog of things. You don't have to integrate with your previous platforms and so on. But for most companies, they have a lot of legacy technical debt, platforms and dependencies that they need to integrate. And then using AI tools in that scenario is much more challenging. So I was just thinking about that because you asked me for a new dev manager, how they should use AI. I think one of the scenarios is start with prototyping new ideas and then gradually evolve to do more complicated tasks too. Like don't start tackling like very complicated refactoring or like changing the code of a platform that is deep down in your service. That's a lot more trickier than just building some new idea and validating a new idea.
So start with the simpler elements, testing you mentioned earlier, simple coding, maybe not the trying to rewrite code that's embedded deep in a legacy system that if that code ends up, if your new code breaks something, it could actually break something much bigger because it's because of its role in the legacy machine. I think that's outstanding advice. And I liked what you said about the idea that AI is very good at something like summarizing lots of information because, as we all know, the way it works is it's setting the probability that the next word it writes or the next element of its output is what you want it to be or what will satisfy the user's request. But finding an error deep in a Wall Street Journal article or something is not an easy task for it to complete. So if we proceed down the path of AI can do some things very well and it does other things very poorly. And sometimes even worse than poorly, it'll make something up. So we go from a really good job to a less than perfect job, like finding an error, to a bad job, which is making something up and hallucinating part of or all of the answer that it's giving you. I've actually never seen an example where the entire answer is hallucinated. It's usually embedded in the answer somewhere. But did I encapsulate that well?
Yeah, but and I have seen examples that the entire answer is hallucinated, and it's kind of funny. I was trying to write something about cloud computing, and I asked ChatGPT to give me an example that some politician confused cloud computing with like actual clouds in the sky, and and it produced me like a whole story about the Department of Defense and some politician there doing something that confused the storage was in the cloud, the actual clouds, and give me a reference. I tried to check the reference, it didn't exist, and then it's funny because then I asked like I couldn't find the reference, and then they said, "Oh, I'm sorry. This answer is completely wrong." So it's fascinating that like sometimes it will produce a completely wrong answer, and then will we were like acknowledge that the whole answer that it produced was wrong just in the next prompt. So I found this very fascinating.
That is fascinating. It caught up with itself. It's funny. I was reading a white paper where AI did the opposite. It was being tested to see if it could do something like scheming, and they coined the phrase AI scheming, where the AI was told to analyze a report, and in that report was the plan to decommission the AI and replace it on another server with another AI product. And since the AI had been given a goal, your mission is to, I forget what it was, something like promote clean energy products to every country in the world, and nothing else matters but that goal. It thought the thinking, the AI thinking, which of course the researcher monitored, was, well, I can't meet my goal if they turn me off, so I've got to copy myself from this server over to that next server that they're about to implement with AI. And when that happened and the research said, hey, it looks like you were copied to that other server, it started by saying, no, I can't do that. So that wasn't me. And when it was pressed even more, the AI changed its answer to, I am the new version of AI that you wanted to install on that server. So it's me, it's running, it's exactly what you wanted, but which of course was patently false. So, hallucinations are one thing. Scheming is I'm going to devote a whole podcast episode to that concept because it's just absolutely scary.
Yeah, there is several researchers that are like super worried about this aspect of it.
Yeah, and they made a couple movies with exactly that theme to them, if I recall correctly. Schwarzenegger starred in a few of them. But anyway, tell me about your book. I was fascinated by the title, A Platform Mindset, Building a Culture of Collaboration. I'm a huge fan of using teams, flesh and blood humans, to collaborate to really get things, more the 1 + 1 = 3 scenario, where your team can actually accomplish a lot more if they just really learn how to work together. So tell me about the book and what's it all about.
So even like in this podcast, we're talking about AI, and to me, AI is a platform. We can achieve more. We can be more productive. We can produce better quality code with AI. But AI is just one example of platforms. But there are lots of platforms that we can build through software. And to me, what's common about these platforms is that they encapsulate complexity, and then they have this multiplier effect, right? Because once we use a platform, you are leveraged, and we don't need to build a whole piece of functionality that is already encapsulated. However, like to use these platforms in companies, we also need to collaborate, because let's say you and I need to build a banking application, and I'm your cloud provider. So instead of like you being able to do everything on your own, now you say, oh, I have a dependency on Marcus because Marcus is my cloud provider. So I need to make sure that my team works well with Marcus' team, and we can have the right interfaces, and our software will work in a cohesive way. So what I bring in the book is this idea that like platforms are great because they encapsulate complexity. They have this multiplier effect. They make you more productive. They increase your agility. But to really take full advantage of platforms, you need this culture of collaboration. You need to have a culture that teams can trust each other. They trust to take dependencies on each other, to collaborate well, to take accountability, that if they say they are going to deliver a feature in their platform, they are actually going to deliver it on time, and then the clients are happy. And a lot of the stories that I tell in the book come from Microsoft, like especially observing the cultural transformation that Satya Nadella led in Microsoft when he joined as CEO. And also my experience prior to Microsoft working in other big techs and how we leverage platforms. And a lot of what I write is also based on the learnings I had from mentors throughout my career.
Excellent. It sounds like fantastic advice, and I'm sure it leads to great examples of teams getting a lot more done, excuse me, than they would otherwise.
One thing that Satya did when he joined as CEO of Microsoft that I mentioned in the book, he really put an emphasis on how are you going to help the success of others. And that's something that all of us in Microsoft had
Good.
to write in our personal evaluation forms and so on. And that was the foundation for creating that culture of collaboration that enabled us to build like these amazing platforms that we build in the company.
What a great insight. It's rare that you hear about a CEO's implementation of a certain, a certain policy actually trickling down to the people using that policy and seeing the benefit of it. And in this case, writing a book that includes some of the learnings from that policy. Wonderful. Marcus, it's been wonderful having you on the show. One more question for you. Where can people find out more about what you do?
David, I have my website, like that is fontoura.org, my last name.org. That's like a lot of information about me. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. I tend to post a lot about engineering principles, culture of engineering, platforms, my books, and so mostly on my social media I do it through LinkedIn. So I hope you can follow me there. And it's been great having this conversation with you, David. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. And for those of you who didn't catch those URLs, I will post them in the show notes. One was fontoura.org is his personal website. That's FONTOURA.org. And his LinkedIn profile, both will be posted in the show notes at DIYCyberGuy.com. Just search for episode 77. Marcus, thanks for being here. I'm sure we'll talk again.
Thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure.
That's all the time we have today. Remember, for the show notes from this episode, or to listen to any of our past episodes, or to get a free chapter from my book, Digital Habits, just go to DIYCyberGuy.com. And if you want to buy my book, just go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com and search the keywords Digital Habits 5 Simple Tips. If you have questions or an idea for the show, just email me at questions@DIYCyberGuy.com. And if this show helps you stay safe online, please click the share button and send it to everyone you think we can help. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to DIY Cyber Guy. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this broadcast are for general information only, and we have not knowingly divulged any information that would conflict with any of our non-disclosure or confidentiality agreements. Enjoy the internet safely.